Night had long descended upon the small town, and its inhabitants were sleeping soundly, undisturbed by the occasional noise of passing trains on the nearby railroad, the barking of stray dogs, or the bright full moon shining down on them. No one heard the scraping and thudding sounds coming from the outskirts of town, from the cemetery, where two men were digging up a fresh grave. Only the moon watched them with some curiosity. Or was it really the woman sitting on a nearby bench, observing the men's work attentively? "Hey, lady, you haven't changed your mind yet. Maybe we shouldn't disturb the dead?" One of the grave diggers wiped his forehead, asking her. "No, I haven't," the woman answered sharply. "Keep digging. I paid you for this." "I don't understand," the other man said. "We'll dig up the coffin, and then what? You're not taking it with you." "I don't need to," the woman replied more calmly. "I just want to see him, and then you'll bury him again." "You're a strange lady," the second man chuckled. "What do you want to see there? According to the tombstone, he's been dead for a month already." "At least not a whole year," the woman said, "but I'll recognize him anyway." The grave diggers exchanged a glance, thinking the woman must be out of her mind with grief. But what did they care? She had paid them handsomely. So they resumed digging in silence, not asking any further questions. Meanwhile, the woman sat there waiting, lost in thought. Marion had given birth to a son after turning 40, after years of trying in vain to conceive with her husband. Then he left her for a younger, healthier woman, who quickly gave him 2 daughters. Marion continued to live alone in their small village. One day, a young agronomist arrived in town, fresh out of college. Marion worked in the accounting office and often interacted with the newcomers, who had come to see the chairman on various matters. She noticed how he looked at her more and more often, and one day he offered her a ride home in his SUV. She accepted and invited him in for tea. And that was the night. Marion herself didn't understand how she lost her mind. In the morning she realized what she had done. Roger was only 24, while she was 40. It was really shameful. She looked good for her age, but it was still wrong, and the people in the village would find out and laugh at her. She told Roger about her concerns, but he just shrugged and said they didn't have to date if she didn't want to. His interest in her seemed to diminish after he got what he wanted. Marion suffered for a week from her foolishness, suffocating the budding love in her heart, and then pretended that Roger meant nothing to her. Roger acted as if nothing had happened between them. He didn't say much, and then Marion found out she was pregnant. She was overjoyed, scared, and ashamed all at once. She had been married to her husband for 15 years, and all the doctors had told her that she was infertile. "I don't recommend keeping the pregnancy," the doctor at the clinic told her bluntly. "You're already at a critical age. It's unknown how it will affect the child." "I will keep it," Marion answered defiantly. "You've been telling me for years that I have no chance of getting pregnant, and now I am pregnant. I don't believe you. Everything will be fine." "Well then, let's keep it," the doctor replied emotionlessly, and he gave Marion a bunch of referrals for tests and prescriptions. Soon Roger left the village. Marion was even happy about it. She didn't want him to know anything. This was her child. In the village, people speculated about who Marion got pregnant from in her old age, but they never figured it out. She lived alone after her husband left, but that was none of their business. The women in the village gossiped for a while and calmed down. It wasn't their burden to raise the child. Porter was born on time and perfectly healthy. When Marion first held her son to her breast, she immediately realized that she was now the happiest person in the world. She was not alone in this world. Porter grew up to be a wonderful son, did well in school, participated in various school competitions, and became more and more interested in track and field. Marion thought that after school, her son would go to college, whether for physics, literature, or sports. He was successful in everything, and Marion would agree with any choice he made. But then he shocked his mother. "And then I'm going to a technical university." "Son, why waste time?" Marion sincerely didn't understand. "Enroll now. You'll have a deferment." "No, Mum. I'll serve right away, and then I'll go to university. Besides, I'll have benefits after the army when I enroll." Marion reluctantly agreed. She knew it was useless to argue with her stubborn son. The farewell was well done. All his classmates were there, and Heather was there. She was his first love. A good girl. Marion liked her. She even imagined the girl as her future daughter-in-law. Later, they both stood on the platform, embracing and crying, watching the departing train. "Okay, Heather, let's go," Marion sighed. "Now we'll wait for our porter." The girl just nodded in response. She was really nice. Even when she went to the city to study, she didn't forget about Marion and often called her. One day, Marion heard Heather's anxious voice on the phone. "Marion, have you watched the news today?" the girl asked anxiously. "Oh, no, Heather, I decided to re-wallpaper the kitchen today, so I've been busy since morning. I've regretted starting this job 10 times already. I haven't even had a cup of tea all day, and I haven't even turned on the TV in the living room." "Marion, there was an attack," the girl said in a trembling voice. "At the border, where Porter is serving. There was shooting there." Marion's eyes darkened. She struggled to breathe, and her head spun. The woman felt horrible. She turned off the phone and collapsed into a chair in the hallway, exhausted. After regaining her composure, she turned on the TV. The news, she heard, even somewhat calmed the woman. Yes, there was shooting, but the conscripts weren't involved. And that was already good. An hour later, Porter called. They were allowed to call sometimes. "Son, how are you there?" "Everything's fine, Mum," she heard Porter's cheerful voice, and that completely restored her emotional balance. "There are such passions in the news there." "Well, don't believe everything they show. It's just that some neighbours got worked up, but ours have already calmed them down." "Did you calm them down too?" "What are you talking about? They won't let us anywhere near there. There are contractors working there, and we just go out for training." "Training. Son, take care of yourself." "Of course, Mum." They talked a little about everything. Afterward, Marion felt uneasy again. What kind of training is it when they shoot at the border? Is her son just calming her down, or is there really nothing to worry about? A week passed. Porter didn't call once during that time, and the news from that area became more and more alarming. "Marion, how's Porter?" the woman at the store asked when Marion was passing by for bread. "He's serving," she answered shortly. "Oh, what a disaster! Porter went to serve when such a mess started," the kind-hearted woman lamented. "But, stay strong. Everything's fine." Marion waved her off, but her thoughts were only on her son. A month passed. Porter never called. Marion went to the district draft board. "Everything's normal," the military man from the draft board assured her. "If anything happened, they would have notified us. Don't worry yourself." "But why is he silent, and his phone is unreachable?" Marion asked, barely holding back tears. "Well, that's just how it is now. They're not allowed to call, and nothing will happen to your son. Only the contractors are involved in the conflict, and your Porter is a conscript. He's been serving for 8 months now, right? Soon, Mum, your son will be back home." Marion calmed down a bit. "He'll come back. It's just how things are now." And then, after a month, she suddenly received a call from the draft board, asking her to come urgently. She rushed to the building of the draft board right away. There was no time to wait for the regular bus. She arrived during the lunch break. All the offices were closed, and only a girl in her 20s was sitting in the reception area. "Wait," she said. The management will be back from lunch soon, and they'll tell you everything." "What happened there?" Marion asked anxiously. "I don't know," the girl said, just lowering her eyes. At 2:00, the commissioner pulled up to the draft board meeting, warily looking at the mother, trembling with nervousness. Marion had just gone outside to inhale some fresh air and calm her thoughts. "Come in," the commissioner said hoarsely, and opened the doors, and in the office Marion heard the terrible news. "Mrs. Sullivan, your son died," the commissioner said. "Today they called from the unit and said that, as a result of a heart attack, nothing could be done." "What heart attack?" Marion whispered in horror. "My boy is completely healthy. They wouldn't have taken him into the army if he weren't." "Yes, that's true, but the human body is a complex thing. Apparently there was a malfunction somewhere." "A malfunction? What malfunction?" Marion shouted. "I gave birth to a healthy boy, a living one, and you're talking to me about some kind of malfunction?" "Mrs. Sullivan, please don't shout. I don't know any more than you," sighed the commissioner, "and please accept my condolences." Marion wept as the military office staff brought her water and sedatives. But could that really help? Was Porter, her only son, really dead? No, this had to be a mistake. "Where can I get his body?" Marion asked, calming down a bit. "The thing is, Porter has already been buried. There at the town cemetery where he served," the commissioner answered, avoiding eye contact. Honestly, he couldn't understand why everything had happened this way, but he was told to deal with it. There's always someone higher up. "Is that right?" Marion couldn't believe it. "They're supposed to return my son to me." "In special circumstances, this can't happen. You know that it's not peaceful in those areas right now. Apparently there are many difficulties with sending the body, so they buried him there," the commissioner explained. "The documents will be delivered in a few days. They will bring them to you." Marion left the office trembling. She wouldn't hear anything new here, and her son was gone. They didn't even let her say goodbye to his body. The documents. What did she need them for? The whole village seemed to freeze upon hearing of the tragedy. Porter, their lively, kind and cheerful boy, was dead. How terrifying it was. It's so hard for a mother to go through this. They pitied Marion. What a terrible thing had happened to this woman, who had lived her whole life for her son. What was left for her to do now? What was there to live for? The villagers did their best to console Marion with words of sympathy, but it only exacerbated her unhappy heart. Heather arrived upon hearing of the tragedy. "What are you doing here, Heather? You need to study. Your session is probably coming soon," Marion said. "I wouldn't leave you at such a time," Heather cried, tears streaming down her face, and it was easier for Marion with Heather there. Together they remembered Porter, looking at his photos. It was painful, but at the same time, it seemed to bring some comfort. One day, while Heather was with Marion, there was a knock on the door. It was a courier who brought the documents for Porter. Marion just looked at the papers and put them on the table in the living room. She didn't have the strength to read them. Marion went to the bedroom to lie down. She wasn't feeling well. Heather took the documents. "Marion!" Heather suddenly exclaimed in excitement. "What did they tell you Porter died from?" "From a heart attack," Marion replied quietly. "I wish my heart would stop instead." "But it says in the papers that he died of pneumonia." Heather approached the bed and looked at the woman in confusion. Marion abruptly got up from the bed, took the papers and read them carefully. "Maybe something got mixed up at the military office," she muttered. "It's not clear," Heather agreed. There was a pause, and she added, "Marion, have you thought about going there, to where they buried Porter, to find out what happened?" "I have," Marion admitted, "but they told me it's not advisable right now, only when everything calms down. I want to bring my son home. Do you know if exhumation is very complicated?" "I think so," Heather nodded, then exclaimed, "But what difference does it make, whether it's complicated or not? We have to go, find out why Porter died, and we have to do it soon. Let them exhume his body and explain why they said one thing but wrote another in the papers." Soon, Marion and Heather went to the place where Porter was buried. When they arrived at the military unit, they were told, "No exhumation will be carried out. Your son died of an infection. Opening the grave is dangerous and even illegal." Marion objected. "But the military enlistment office told me that my son died of a heart attack." The unit commander replied, "I don't know what they told you, but the cause of death is clearly written in black and white in the documents. He had a heart attack, because against the background of pneumonia, the heart couldn't handle it. Woman, calm down and accept everything as it is. Nothing can be changed now." Marion tearfully asked, "Can you at least show me my son's grave?" The commander agreed, saying, "Yes, it's in the town cemetery. They'll escort you there." Soon, Marion and Heather were at the cemetery. It was the most remote part of it, and Porter found his final resting place here. Heather and Marion stood at the grave and silently looked at the metal plaque on the wooden cross. Porter Sullivan, only 19 years old, lived on this earth. Suddenly, Heather felt uneasy. She asked Marion for Porter's death documents and double-checked everything. "I don't understand," she said in confusion. "Porter was born on the 25th, but on the plaque it says the 26th, and in the documents too." "They messed up again," Marion replied warily, sat down on the grave and cried. "My little son, how could this happen? They didn't even let me say goodbye to you." Heather convinced her that they had to act. They had to demand exhumation in any case, and after the cemetery, they returned to the unit. The unit commander yelled, "What are you fussing about? They just made a little mistake. You see what time it is now. Everything was done rushing. Your soldier is buried there, and that's it. What do you want to see there? A decomposing body? Are you sure you can handle that sight?" Marion replied quietly, "I can handle it." But they didn't listen to her anymore, escorted her out of the unit, and told her to calm down and accept the loss. No one will open Porter's grave. It's not allowed. In the hotel, Heather and Marion silently packed their things. The train was coming soon, and then Marion dropped her suitcase and burst into tears. "I'm not going anywhere," she suddenly said firmly. "I'll dig up this grave myself, and only when I realize that my child is there, then I'll go." "How can you do it yourself?" Heather was shocked. "Who will let you?" "I've already figured it all out. I'll find 2 homeless people and pay them a high reward to open the grave at night, open the coffin, and see if Porter is there. It hasn't been that long." "How much do you have to pay homeless people to agree to that?" Heather was at a loss. "I have savings. I saved it for my son's education, but this is how it turned out. I'll give it all to them," Marion said firmly. "And what about the infection?" Heather asked. "Heather, this disease probably has been among us for a long time. It won't be any worse in the coffin." "Maybe you're right. But there's a guard at the cemetery. He'll notice when they start digging up the grave." Heather looked worried. "This is where you'll help me. We'll buy him some drinks. You'll treat him well, distract him." "You've thought of everything," Heather said with a sad smile. "So we just need to find the diggers." They were lucky, and soon they found 2 strong-looking men who appeared to be homeless at the station, and explained what they needed. The homeless men didn't think long. They agreed. They weren't bothered that they would be breaking the law. After all, they were promised good money. They realized that if something went wrong, they could run away and no one would catch them. And so, under the cover of darkness, they arrived at the cemetery. Heather was busy distracting the guard at the cemetery. He was happy that a young girl had come to chat with him, as he was used to only seeing graves and sad people. And in the meantime, Marion was sitting nearby her son's grave, anxiously waiting. The homeless men were waving their shovels. "Bingo!" one of them shouted, hitting the lid of the coffin. They both dug in, and soon they pulled the coffin out of the grave. "It's so light," said the digger. "Was your son tiny when he went to serve?" Marion struggled to speak. "He was 90 kilograms when he left to serve," she finally managed to say, unable to take her eyes off the coffin. "Open it, please." The men hooked the lid, and with a loud noise the coffin opened. All three of them looked inside and gasped. The moon was shining desperately, so everything was perfectly visible. The coffin was empty. "Where's the deceased?" one of the homeless men finally said. "He ran away." The second one smirked and looked at Marion, saying, "Well, Mother, should we bury it?" "No way!" Marion screamed as if waking up. "Leave everything as it is. You go. Go away from here. Thank you." After paying the diggers, Marion made some calls, first to Heather, then to the police. When the police arrived at the cemetery, she explained what she was doing there, incoherently. Of course, the police officers couldn't believe that 2 women had dug up the grave and pulled out the coffin themselves, but they turned a blind eye to that. Everyone was interested in something else. Where was the body? The next morning, the city prosecutor's office was on fire, and representatives of the military prosecutor's office arrived. At first, they wanted to blame Marion for everything. Why did she dig up the grave? But the main question remained unanswered. Where was the body? The commander of the unit where Porter served was questioned, and that's when everything was revealed. It turned out that Porter was among the other conscripts on manoeuvres. Then there was shelling, real shelling. The conscripts were frightened and they ran off in different directions. It was their first real battle. The arrived patrol found everyone later, but Porter wasn't there. Apparently he was killed. And they didn't find his body because the entire field was riddled with craters from explosions. It was decided that Porter's body was somewhere on the ground. What to do? They decided to issue a death certificate for Porter due to illness to justify everything to the authorities. After that, they can't bring the boy back anyway. Who knew that his mother would be so stubborn? It had been about 6 months since Marion and Heather returned to their hometown. There were major personnel changes in that military unit, including the unit commander, who was brought to martial court. However, it did not make things easier for Marion because her son didn't even have a grave. The woman turned grey with grief, while Heather cried all the time. She hoped until the end that Porter was alive and that they had confused him with another soldier. But now they know that he is definitely no longer in this world. One early morning, someone knocked on Marion's window. The poor woman opened the door and froze. Was she dreaming? She even rubbed her eyes. Porter stood in the doorway, alive, although thin. "Mum, I'm back," her son exclaimed. "Porter, am I sleeping?" whispered the woman. "Mum, I'm not a dream, I'm alive." Porter laughed and rushed to his mother, who fell unconscious. When Marion came to her senses, she was already covered with a blanket on the bed, and her son sat next to her, alive. "Son, they told me you had died," Marion whispered. "They were wrong, Mum." Porter sighed and told her. It turned out that during the exercises and shelling, he was concussed and taken captive. Porter and the other captive guys were kept in some basement for all these months. The military negotiated for their release, but everything fell apart at the last minute. Recently, the transfer finally took place. Everyone was immediately taken to the hospital, where it was found that Porter was considered dead. After receiving the necessary treatment, he was demobilized and sent home. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Marion cried. "I couldn't, Mum. We were forbidden to contact our relatives until all the checks were done. And as soon as it became possible, I rushed to see you. And now I'm home. My son, I won't let you go anywhere else." Although, no, she did. After a while, Porter, as he had dreamed before, entered a technical university and is now studying successfully. He and Heather will soon have a wedding.